So with a little bit of smear of Hylamar on this gasket, I fit the gasket in there, and then we'll get the oil pump. Most importantly, we need the drive. Don't forget to put the drive in. Now this is where you'll see it's really handy when you take the oil pump off before you do that skew gear, because trying to line those splines up would be a nightmare. So now we put the pump in. There, it's lined on the spline. And then we get, I think it's some tab washers next. Hold on a second. I think are these them or them? These are them, I think. And a couple of bolts. Well, I'll get a couple of new bolts. And there's the little tab washers, little lock washers that go onto here. Yeah, them's the ones. Let me get a couple of bolts. Right, so let's get these on. Tab washers were used in older engines where we didn't have sort of fantastic devices such as Loctite and spring washers and things like that. This one's a bit difficult to do with a socket, can't get in. So we'll tighten that down with a 13mm and then we'll come back. So I've got the lock washers bent over the tab washers. One goes down towards the block and one comes up towards the face of the bolt. Let's see if I can turn this around without doing myself a mischief. Like that sort of thing. Let's see. Where is it? There we are. See, that's how they go. Now we're getting towards the final stretches of this motor, but can't get this camera out this morning. So what we're going to do now is tighten on the crank bolt. Now the crank bolt is supposed to be tightened up to 150 pounds. Not a problem. Torque wrench goes up way past 150 pounds. The problem is, I haven't got an adapter for my socket. This is a 41mm socket and it's 1/2-inch drive. I had this welded up when I was an apprentice, but it's not going to take anything, so I'm going to just jam up the crank and put a big bar on there and hopefully it's tight. I'm going to put a bit of Loctite on that nut. I don't find it. I've had it here. Oh, there it is. Put a bit of Loctite on it just in case. Now, using a suitable piece of wood, which just happened to be my brush, just jamming that in against the web of the crank and the block, we should be able to lock that crank up so we can put a bit of reef on this this nut. I hope it works. Yeah. I never use a big scaffolding tube. Oh, wait a minute, I have to fasten down my my engine because that's all turning. Wait a minute. Hold on. Hold that tiger. We'll edit this bit out. Right. That's not going to come off in a hurry. The bar I used was quite long, so that should have enough torque on there. Let's put it back so I don't lose it. How can you lose a great big bar like that? So now we are ready to fit the sump. Now, fitting the sump is kind of easy, but there's a few processes that you have to follow. One of them is it's got to be clean. As you can see here, there's lots of oil on there. We've got to get that off. We're going to put a seal of RTV sealer and a gasket this time, and I'll show you the sump when I get around to it. The surface is nice and clean and dry, but look at here where there's very little surface area contact to the outside world and this bolt here. There's not much. You've got bags of thickness here, but precious little here. So we're going to concentrate and put some RTV around here. But what we're going to do is put the bead, doesn't matter where you start, on the inside. Like that, look. See what I mean? All the way. Because if you put it on the outside, it's a waste of time because it'll go through the bolt holes. We want it on the inside. Let me get on with that, and then we'll put the gasket on. Sometimes you don't need a gasket if you put RTV on, but this time I'm going to put one on, just because we've got one. There's no particular way it goes on, but the angled pieces here are to the front. Yes, no, there is a way it goes on. It goes on this way because that bolt is offset. This stud here is offset, so it's my bad. Gee whiz, I've not done one of these for a long time, have I? Now, careful observation will see when you lay that gasket on there, there's a couple of places I've missed here because I thought the sump went this way. So we're just going to carefully lift that off and put some seal around here. Very tight to those bolts around there, like that. Look, we'll take that seal around there. Let's have a check of this front, make sure it's all going to be good. That's good. Here, missed it here, look, you see, because it goes at an angle. Always check these things, eh? We can take that as a smear over there. And we coat. Same as here. Now you see when we do the 300 TDIs and the 200 TDIs, we don't have to bother with this because there is a full smear of sealer. So what we're going to do now is go over the top of this again and put a bead of sealer on the top of the gasket. Just a thin coat. Now we've got a gasket on, we can see where it's actually going to touch. Now I'm doing this instead of Hylamar because sumps do leak, and these paper gaskets are not what they used to be. They used to be really thick. So these I always put a little bit of silicone on just to help them. Right, now we can fit the sump, but I wanted to notice on this sump in particular, now I have seen them and it's been reported to me that they didn't have the reinforcement in here. It was just tin, and perhaps that explains why this has got a thinner gasket in, because this is a bit more rigid. Who knows which is the front? There we go. So there we go, and it's good night Vienna. Now we've got to get the oil pump lined up. Is it going to line up? Let's take the dipstick out. Ah, that's better. There. Now this is the key to it. We just give it a little bit of a wiggle around and just make sure that gasket's all nice and sealed up, and then we'll get some bolts in. So with all the bolts in place and the sump's down, we're now going to tighten it down. I'm going to nip it down with the gun a little bit, evenly, starting sort of on the diagonals, if you see what I mean. Contrary to popular belief, the tighter the bolts are, the tighter the gasket seal is going to be. It doesn't necessarily need to be like that once you've got this stuff in. Half the time it just needs a a wee nip. What have I got up to? This one here. That one we're going to have to do by hand, because I can't quite get into it. And then just go around them and just make sure they're all nipped up tight. The gun's good for nipping them, you know, like for running them down, but you can't beat feeling the bolts, if you see what I mean. Now you will see some gasket squeege out the side. We're going to leave that to dry and then we're going to trim it down. But you can see perhaps down here where the gaskets come out. You see down here, that's not a bad thing, because even though we put it on the inside, even though we put the gasket on the inside, it's squidged out here, so we know it's gone all the way round. If we'd have put it on the outside as well, we'd have had it squidged and it would be all on the floor by now. Don't want that. There we go. Lovely. One sump on. So now I've got to think of a way to try and tip this engine back onto its place again, you know, like upright. I don't know how I'm going to do that because it's going to be bloody heavy. I wonder if I use my my jack here to lift it up. Yeah, well, we'll try that, because what I want to do now is take it off the frame, put it onto my elevator, my lift over here, so I can put the rear flywheel on and the housing and the clutch and things like that. Because I believe we're finished now, apart from doing the sump plug. Always replace the gaskets. It's really false economy to build an engine up and not do the gasket. Now, funniest thing about these gaskets, when you get them, we've got a shed load of them left. Like a shed load of copper washers left. I don't know what the hell they do, you know. I think you've been in the same position as well. You get gasket sets, and the gaskets are sort of pretty much self-explanatory, but the actual gaskets are just a mystery. Because look, I've got this lot left here. Obviously, that's a sump plug one. I don't know what all these lot do. Maybe you've got some spare sump plug ones. Anyway, let's get this on. Let's try and get this engine back on its feet again.